everyone, Chris here. So, I am looking right now at Treantmonk versus the Gauntlet on CMCC builds. So this was essentially a one-shot for a solo character along with two sidekick characters that are very, very weak. And so I had to make a build for a 14th level gauntlet that would include several encounters, and not easy encounters either. And the idea was to see how far I could get with the build. So I did a video where I discussed the build and why I made the decisions I did and the strategies it would use. And so I'll link that up above here somewhere. But if you saw my last video, you've already seen it. So in this video, we're going to just react to the first of what I think will be two videos from CMC builds on me versus the Gauntlet. I want to discuss where I think I did things right, where I think I did things wrong, and how the build performed. So let's take a look.
For those that may be new to the channel, the Gauntlet is a series of difficult encounters meant to demo builds by pushing them to the brink, during which I will walk you through the strong, optimized play, occasional mistakes, interesting or even broken tactics, or tech as it's known in some circles, all in easily consumable 15 to 20 minute videos, rather than a live play session that takes 3 and all the way up to 10 hours sometimes, with people talking over each other, taking long pauses to think through their actions. If you want more details on the Gauntlet, I'll link a video above. And if you want to join the Discord to play the Gauntlets, plural, there is a link in the description below. Quick bit of housekeeping: if you like the video, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Patreon link below if you want some cool perks. Special thanks to 2 Minute Tabletop and Bearworks for the maps featured here today, to RT who designed the encounters of this Gauntlet, Oddfather who DM'd the entirety of today's adventure, and of course the one, the only, Chris who piloted the build for this adventure. Details of that build will be released on his channel, so be sure to check that out. Let's set the scene. A Mind Flayer Arcanist has subverted a temple dedicated to a sea deity and is using it as a magical power source. The desecration has provoked the angry undead in the temple catacombs. Deciding it's not worth his time, the Illithid flooded the lower caverns and denied anyone access to the bottom levels. The hero and 2 sidekicks need to stop the Mind Flayer's ritual before it concludes in 4 hours. That means long rests are out of the question, and short rests must be used judiciously. Having heard the tragic tale of Nuke the Wizard and Barb the Zealot, another champion rises to the challenge.
Yeah, so there's been 2 video series so far on the Gauntlet. The first was Mark, or CMCC Build's own build, the Nuclear Wizard, that used a simulacrum to basically double his spell slots, and did very well. He made it almost to the end. And then the second one was a Zealot Barbarian that I thought might do well because they have that Deathless Rage. Did not do well. So that's the thing, is you get incapacitated and paralyzed, and that Deathless Rage doesn't do you much good. So my build, moving in, I should mention in this first encounter, I was told that the map is flooding. So you'll see that there's kind of a river on the map, but as of round 2, everything is submerged. So there's no point, like there's some sharks and there's no way to really get away from them. So I didn't really worry about it.
This one forged in the heart of a dying star and dreamed into existence from the mind of an optimizer. He calls himself Quasar, or Sorlockadin, with 6 levels in both Paladin and Sorcerer, and 2 in Dow Warlock. Riding on his trusty warhorse, summoned with a fine steed spell, the hero and his 2 sidekicks, the Kenku Expert and Orc Warrior, steel themselves for the horrors that lie ahead. Quasar's metal half-plate clanks against the stallion's plate barding, announcing their presence to the world. Quasar never bothered to learn the meaning of stealth, let alone how to use it in practice.
I did a couple stealth checks in this one shot. Did not go well.
Quasar holds a +1 Rod of the Packkeeper. The warrior wields a +1 great axe, and the expert uses a +1 shortbow. Apart from these, a standard set of mundane items is all they possess. As they cross the threshold into the catacombs, sloshing through the knee-high water, the weirds and mummies roll for surprise. Even with decent rolls, the Kenku's perceptive ears hear the monsters in the distance. Roll for initiative.
Round 1.
Great rolls from the sidekicks put them on the top of the order, followed by Team Monster, with Quasar pulling up the rear. At this point, we'll bring up the Paladin's Aura of Protection, highlighting those eligible for the +5 bonus to saving throws. The Expert and Warrior are first to go. They look at each other, and then to their charismatic leader. Once more into the fray? Not today. They hunker down and take the dodge action, Defense wins championship.
All right, so this is why you take the dodge action in this situation. So they are currently in a Paladin aura. They're very soon going to be in a Spirit Guardian aura. These sidekicks are not strong. Sending them out towards the enemies at this point is just going to kill them. So it's better to take a defensive action. I don't think the warrior could even attack these enemies at this range. Maybe he could have with disadvantage, I'm not sure. And I think the Kenku actually had disadvantage at this range as well. So I figured best thing to do, them winning initiative actually wasn't a good thing. It would have been better if they had lost initiative and had the enemies come in closer so they could have actually done some stuff. So the dodge is really just a delay tactic.
Right? Confused, the Water Weirds take their turn and attempt to hide. Not with those rolls. The water is too low, their movement easily trackable. They lie in wait for their prey to approach. The mummies lumber ahead, their slow movement speed insufficient in bringing them within range to use their dreadful glare. So instead, they ready in action. Quasar, with his companions huddled beside him, casts Spirit Guardians at 4th level, excluding his 2 sidekicks and horse, of course. He then marches forward, careful to keep the warrior in the protective aura.
Round 2.
The expert scoots ahead just far enough to get a shot on the invisible water weird. It can hear sloshing in the distance. Natural 1 though, it's not gonna do it. The warrior slides forward, intending to attack the same water weird. But the ready dreadful glare goes off as the orc enters its range. A 4 is a fail, but the paladin's aura bumps that to a 9, preventing paralysis at least, but not enough to stave off the frightened effect. The warrior doesn't miss a beat and tosses 2 javelins, hitting with...
So here the paladin aura is already coming into play, because paralyzation, you do not want it. Frightened you can deal with, but paralyzation would just be devastating.
Both despite disadvantage for 12 piercing. The irritated water weird swims towards the party and enters the Spirit Guardians. An 18 wisdom save is enough for a success, so the 18 Spirit Guardians damage is cut in half. Its constrict attack misses the Kenku, and it pushes back into the depths of the trench. The second weird moves, failing miserably on its wisdom save, taking the full 18 damage. Attacking Quasar, the constrict attack hits with a 22, but the Sorlockadin throws up a shield in response. Dejected, the weird slinks back into the water. The mummies lurch forward 20 feet with all of their movement. Another dreadful glare at the warrior, who rolls natural 1. Even with the aura bonus, that's still not enough to prevent paralysis.
And there you go. So even with the bonuses, sometimes the dice just don't like you.
Gotta make those wisdom saves, people. Quasar pulls back from the nearest weird, so it's just out of the effect of the Spirit Guardians, then uses...
Alright, so here we're going to see the strategy. So I've got Spirit Guardians up, and my goal is to pull as many creatures as I can into it each round. I have the Crusher feat, I have Grasp of Vidar, I have the Telekinetic feat.
A bonus action to telekinetically pull the elemental. It rolls a natural 20 for a 23, so it's able to resist the pull for now. Annoyed, Quasar raises his hand and fires off an Eldritch Blast. Even with disadvantage, a 30 is just enough to hit that AC 13 creature. The cantrip deals 7 force damage and, more importantly, 5 bludgeoning. The Crusher feat then kicks in, allowing Quasar to move the enemy 5 feet in any direction. And in this instance, that will be right into the Spirit Guardians, a swirling mist of cosmic energy. A failed save deals another 18 radiant damage. Quasar and his warhorse trot 10 feet closer to the other water weird, attacking with a 13, which just hits for 12 damage. Grasp of Hadar pulls the weird 10 feet towards Quasar, again right into the Spirit Guardians. A wisdom save of 4 means it takes the full 18 radiant damage. Seeing the
So right there, 36 additional damage just from pulling creatures into Spirit Guardians. And he's saying the horse trots. At this point, we're all swimming. The horse is swimming, the sidekicks are swimming, and we're swimming through the rest of this fight, basically.
Weird flail from the pain. He blasts it again. A 16 hits for 9 damage, and he watches as the weird melts away into the water. To finish his turn, he moves back toward the remaining weird, ensuring it starts its turn in the galactic mist of the Spirit Guardians for another dose of damage.
Round 3.
The water rushes into the chamber, filling to neck height. Along
I guess
with the
this
water,
is the point
9
where it
hunter
fills up.
sharks,
Sorry.
nearly 20 feet in length, swim up the channel. They roll initiative, but with a 3, we'll have to wait to have a turn. The experts go. He treads forward, close enough to use the help action on the closest mummy as an action rather than bonus action, so that he can then bonus action dash back to a position of relative safety. The warrior's turn. Paralyzed. When you hear Treantmonk talk about the importance of wisdom saves, hopefully this illustrates why. You can't contribute when you can't move or take actions. The remaining Water Weird starts its turn in the Spirit Guardians and promptly fails its save with a 12, taking a massive 28 points of damage.
That was my best Spirit Guardians roll through this entire encounter. There was one creature. It was too bad because I had some really important rolls later where I did not roll well.
The mummies, oblivious to the dangers of a proximal engagement with the mounted combatant, push forward 10 feet, their soaked wraps swimming behind in their wake. Each mummy glares at a sidekick. Rolls of 8 and 11 are boosted by Quasar's aura, meaning both companions remain safe from the frightened condition. Quasar's turn. The warhorse trots forward, bringing the edge of the Spirit Guardians to the mummy squares. Eldritch Blast hits for 15 force damage and 5 bludgeoning, which triggers the Crusher feat, pulling the mummy into the Spirit Guardians. An 18 barely makes the save, cutting the damage in half to 14. A second Eldritch Blast lands on the other mummy, with a 25 dealing 10 damage. Grasp of Hadar pulls that mummy 10 feet closer. Inside the Spirit Guardians, the mummy rolls a 9, failing its wisdom save and taking the full 28 damage. The third and final Eldritch Blast deals 15 force damage. He then backtracks to ensure both sidekicks are protected by his aura. The hunter sharks dash to get closer to their targets. They swim patiently in a safe distance, waiting for the right opportunity to strike, like when they have an action to actually do so.
Round 4.
The Kenku fires an arrow at the mummy at disadvantage, but still hits with a 22 and deals a very solid 24 piercing, eliminating one mummy. The orc wades through the murky water to get a clear shot at the final mummy. 2 javelin throws both land, but only deal 15 piercing. Not quite enough. The mummy's turn, it glares at Quasar. A natural 1 is only boosted to a 5 with the paladin aura.
And again, another natural 1 on a saving throw against these darn mummies. And the mummies shouldn't have been a big challenge, but they ended up using more resources than I had hoped, just because those saving throws were just abysmal.
That means paralysis and will be devastating to any hopes of success.
Oh, and I should mention, I rolled nat 1, got a +5 on my saving throw, I've got a +4 on my saving throw, so that gives me a total of 5, which is a fail, which would be paralysis. If those hunter sharks move in, which they would be able to do because Spirit Guardians would go down, this is now a TPK.
So Quasar uses his favored with the gods to roll a 2d4 and add it to the save. A 6 is exactly what he needs to succeed. Favored by the gods is good.
Yeah, and even if I hadn't gotten the 6, anything that's not paralysis, which was guaranteed, all I needed was +2, which was guaranteed by favor of the gods, then I would have been frightened. I can deal with frightened. It's all about keeping that Spirit Guardians up, and if it goes down and I'm paralyzed and those hunter sharks surround me, that would have been it.
At this point, the adventurers hunker down on the bridge, staying within the paladin aura as they are surrounded by the sharks. To save myself some sanity and your time, we're going to speed through the next several dozen rolls, during which the final mummy dies, Quasar's steed is killed by the sharks, and several of those sharks are eliminated.
Now at this point, the DM doesn't want to attack the mount. He wants to attack me. He wants to try to kill my character. The thing is that because of positioning, in some cases the sharks could only attack my mount. So then they did, and so they killed the mount. Of course, as the DM learned eventually, targeting my mount is his best move, which is exactly what he does later in this gauntlet.
Round 5.
The Chools enter the initiative order at 12, right along with Quasar, and by round 6, the Chools have reached the scrum. 3 Chools start their turn in the Spirit Guardians, so they must make wisdom saves, and all 3 fail, but take an abysmal 11 damage on a 4th level upcast of Spirit Guardians. Wow.
And that's a point. I had a couple really poor rolls on Spirit Guardians here for the rest of the combat, and this is the point I need to be rolling those 28s, because these Chools, wow, they do a number on us.
The first Chool makes 2 pincer attacks against Quasar. Both land with a 20 and 22. Think again. Out comes the shield spell. The next Chool misses with both attacks, and the third Chool misses the first, but lands the second pincer attack, even with the shield spell. The pincer deals 9 damage, but more importantly, it grapples Quasar, who needs to roll a con save against the Chool's venom. 24 does the trick, preventing the poison condition, and more importantly, paralysis. You may be asking why Quasar isn't making a concentration check right now? Well, because he literally can't fail with plus 12 to con saves. Another Troll enters the Guardian's radius, failing its wisdom save and taking the 11 damage. Both pincer attacks miss as the final Troll tries to find a gap to get to its prey. Having no luck, it circles around to the flittering spirits. Hunter Shark's turn. Wisdom saves for the 3 and the spirits, all failing for another 11 damage. 2 more sharks off the board. The remaining 2 swim into position, meaning the 4th must make a save, and it does. 5 radiant. Both sharks, frenzied from blood in the water, take a bite at the Kenku with advantage, since the expert was hurt during the previous swarm. 14s for both misses. Hearing the turmoil in the distance, a reptilian horror emerges from the stairs. Entering the initiative count.
I should mention, actually, at this point, so I wanted to give a player perspective. So what Mark is doing here is he's giving an abbreviated account of this entire encounter. What I will tell you is, in the actual session, so our DM had come in, and I could tell he was off his game, right? Like he was kind of distracted and acting tired, and I guess he had just had a really rough day. So we're in this combat, and there's no health bars on these creatures, so I don't know where they're sitting on health. I don't know how much is required left to take them out. And in some cases, I would ask, because I would pull a creature into the Spirit Guardians, ask for the Wisdom save, they would make it, they'd take the Spirit Guardians damage, and then I'd be like, did you apply Eldritch Blast damage as well? And he'd be like, oh no, okay, I'll apply the Eldritch Blast damage. And I honestly don't know how much damage was lost that way, but I did find this first session was tough because I'm not used to being the only player character, and I'm running 3 characters essentially and trying to plan my turns ahead of time. There's multiple creatures coming in. It's a challenging fight. And then I'm worrying about whether the damage is being taken or not, or if the DM is missed something because he's having an off day. And we all have them, right? Wow. When this session was done, I was mentally exhausted. And I look at this now and I can see all kinds of little mistakes that I made. And I'll point out some of them as they come up. But it was partially just because I had just gotten drained mentally.
At 13. Before it can move, the expert uses its bonus action to helpful, then attacks the nearest shark with a short sword, missing with a 12. The warrior's attacking with advantage from the Kenku and rolls a 31, crit. A second attack lands with a 21, dealing a combined 19 damage. The expert's bonus 1d6 to the warrior was missed here, which may have been enough to put an end to the shark, who lives to fight another round.
There's
the Hydra swings forward,
mistake.
dashing ahead 60 feet. Quasar, grappled and pulled under the water by the Troll to his right, opens his mouth, gurgles out the words to the Misty Step spell, and bamfs 25 feet away.
All right, so here's my first huge mistake, and this happens over and over again in this fight. So these Trolls keep beating through my shield spell, and then they hit me, and I'm grappled, and then they pull me underwater. And then I'm told, if I want to cast a spell, I need to use Subtle Spell. Good thing I had Subtle Spell. So I was able to cast spells and get out. But so the one that actually hit me is the one right where my cursor is here, right here. And the thing is, it has a 10-foot reach. So if I'd used my bonus action, I could have used Telekinetic, which doesn't require a verbal component, to push it away, and it would have been out of reach, and I would have been grappled anymore. And I could have saved a second level slot and a sorcery point. So that's a huge loss. And this happens multiple times. And all my second level slots ended up going to primarily Misty Steps. And my sorcery points primarily went to subtle spells. And that was a huge loss that was completely unnecessary. I mean, maybe it would have made its strength save. But if it had made its strength save, then I could have considered something else. But there was a good chance it would fail. And I just missed it because, like I said, I was at my capacity of trying to keep track of things, and I started to make mistakes.
Eldritch Blast misses with a nat 1, but the second hits with a 19. The bludgeoning damage is included, totaling 14 damage and moving the Troll 5 feet into the Guardians. It succeeds on its save, taking half damage for another 9 radiant. The final Eldritch Blast also hits with a 19 on the southernmost Chul, and Grasp of Hadar pulls it into the spirits, where it fails its save, taking another 19 radiant damage. Quasar then swims back toward the middle of the fray. Notice the positioning, close enough to the allies to ensure they're in the protective aura, and close enough to the enemies to encircle as many as possible in the Spirit Guardians. Unfortunately, a lack of movement means the northernmost Chul avoids the spirits. The Chul's turn means 4 saving throws that all fail. Each takes 19 radiant damage. This spell is doing absolute work right now. The Chuls shuffle into position to attack. The lower left Chul attacks twice, but a 12 and 19 aren't high enough. Both misses. The Chul to its right tries its claw at things. A 17 misses, but a 23 hit. Quasar cast shield. Sorry, bud. You tried. Chul 3, no luck. Chul 4 must enter the Spirit Guardians to reach Quasar. It barely makes the save with an 18, taking the 9 damage. The first attack misses, but a 25 on the second hits, even with shield. 12 bludgeoning and a con save against the tentacles, which Quasar makes easily. The final Chul slides out of the death zone and attacks the expert with reach, dealing 8 damage with the second attack, and grappling the Kenku, who's able to shake off the effects of the venom as well. Hunter Shark's turn. Wisdom saves, double threes, and death. Nice knowing ya, it's been real. The expert uses a bonus action to help against the Chul that's grappling him, then contorts enough to take a shot at the same Chul with a short bow. A 24 hits, dealing 21 damage. The warrior swims over to the same grappling Chul and stabs it with a javelin. The first attack with advantage hits with a 24. The second misses, a total of 8 damage to the Chuls. The Hydra continues.
So at this point, I'm still hoping that if I can break through these Chuls, I can maybe retreat and then, pick off the Hydra as it's coming in. But it just didn't happen. The Chuls did not go down fast enough. And then the Hydra was in melee with me before I could do anything about it.
The dash, finally reaching the edge of the flittering spirits. Quasar, grappled and underwater, opens his mouth, gurgling the words of a spell with 2 sorcery points.
Once again, could have just telekinetic shoved. Anyway.
He quickens Mirror Image to create 3 duplicates of himself. With his action, he fires off 3 Eldritch Blasts. The second blast hits the northernmost Chul, dealing 16 damage, and pulling it inside the spirits. A failed save tacks on another 14 damage. The final blast goes right for the Hydra, hitting it, dealing 15 force damage, and pulling it 5 feet with Hadar. A nat 1 wisdom save means it takes the full 14 damage. The blast and the spirits chew away at one of the Hydra's heads until it dies. Chuls begin their turn, which means wisdom saves. 4 of the 5 fail, taking all 14 damage and killing the one grappling the expert. Seeing the bird floating free, the northern Chul takes a snap at him. Nat 20 crit for 13 bludgeoning. The Kenku's con save is a 6, and even with the Paladin's +5, it's not enough.
And once again, just bad rolls on the saving throws. But what you don't see behind the scenes are my spell slots, which are just draining away here.
He's paralyzed, and things suddenly look real bad for this sidekick. The 3 remaining Chuls focus fire on Quasar with his magical goodness. One attack makes it through the mirror images and Quasar's armor, but Quasar, mouth filled with water from the prior spell, uses Subtle Spell to cast another shield. The final Chul lands a crit with a nat 20, but when he squeezes those pincers, there's nothing but water. He hit the mirror image instead. 2 remain. Still grappled though, Quasar makes another con save, making it easily with a 31. The expert, paralyzed, gets to make a save at the end of its turn, and a 15 is enough to fight off the paralysis. The warrior, attempting to save the Kenku, hits once for 9 damage. The Hydra's turn, a 14 wisdom save isn't enough, so it begins by taking 14 damage. All 4 heads attack the Kenku, with 2 hitting for 29 damage. At the end of its turn, the Hydra sheds its slumped neck as 2 heads sprout in its place, totaling 6 now. Anytime the Hydra takes more than 25 damage, it loses 1 head, and regrows 2 more, gaining...
So this ends up being a bit of a challenge, because I have no burst damage, right? I could potentially quicken an Eldritch Blast, but that's not adding a whole lot of damage. So Spirit Guardians is pretty much doing flat damage, and at this point, I'm not rolling good on the damage. It's doing like 14 points. Should be doing 18 on average. The Kenku and the Warrior really have no way to contribute a lot of damage. So it's Eldritch Blast, right? And a little bit of Spirit Guardians damage. And what I realized is on my turn, I was just exceeding enough damage to give it an additional head on its turn, and it had a lot of hit points left, so it was going to eventually have a lot of heads. And I had no way to stop the regeneration. He'll talk about it in a bit, but if you saw my build, I don't have any way to deliver fire damage. So no fire damage, can't stop the regeneration. It's going to continue getting additional heads. It has a lot of hit points. I'm not taking those hit points down very quickly. And I determined the only way to really defeat this thing is to do less than 25 points of damage on my turn. If I can deliver just that little bit of damage and, whittle down the hit points, it'll prevent it from having like 10, 12 heads.
20 hit points in the process. Fire damage is the only thing that prevents more heads from regrowing. The only problem here is that Quasar, for all his radiant glory, has no means to deal fire damage. Let's see how this plays out. Quasar picks his jaw off the floor and uses a bonus action to Misty Step out of the Chul's grasp. He then unleashes all 3 Eldritch Blasts at the Hydra. All 3 hit, dealing 35 damage and pulling the Hydra into the Spirit Guardians, sans 1 head, for the full 14 damage. With all the movement, saving throws, attack rolls, and damage, both player and DM, forget about the Misty Step spell. And Quasar gets off another bonus action spell, Sanctuary, which he casts on the Expert. This is a great...
Now, the Sanctuary was very helpful because the Expert at this point was close to dead. Though, again, I should have telekinetic shoved and saved my 2nd level slot.
Great lesson for all of us. Even excellent players like Chris make mistakes in the thick of things. Turns can be skipped, features get forgotten or misplayed, and occasionally rules get unintentionally broken. It happens to everyone. Don't be too hard on yourselves if it does. It's the Chul's turn. 2 wisdom saves, 1 success, 1 fail, for 14 and 7 damage. The Chul, still grappling the Kenku, tries to attack, but fails its wisdom save on Sanctuary, and is forced instead to attack another creature. Turning its sights on Quasar, it tries to hit him, but attacks a mirror image instead, missing with both. The Kenku attempts to save against Chul's tentacles, and a Nat 1 is not going to do it. He's paralyzed and poisoned again. The remaining 2 Chuls move in, both failing their saves, taking 14 damage.
That's my 3rd Nat 1 on a saving throw, I believe.
Spirit Guardians takes another off the board. 4 attacks from the remaining 2 Chuls. 1 is able to sneak through, but another shield puts a stop to that. The Expert struggles to free himself from paralysis, rolls an 8, but is buoyed by the Paladin Aura, which brings that save to a 13, just barely hitting the DC and making the save. The Warrior takes 2 jabs at the nearest Chul, hitting with both and dealing 14 damage. The Hydra's turn means another Wisdom save, which it fails for 14 damage. It attempts to finish off the Kenku, but fails another Wisdom save and chooses to attack Quasar as an alternative. The first attack misses, and with the second, it attempts to hit the Kenku but fails the Wisdom save. The rerouted attack on Quasar gets through the mirror image and lands for 9 damage. Another rerouted attack gets through the mirror image and lands for 10 damage. The final 2 attacks both get rerouted, each hitting the final 2 mirror images instead of Quasar. And as the Hydra ends its turn, 2 more heads sprout as it regenerates 20 hit points, 7 heads. Quasar turns and shoots the Chul behind him at disadvantage. A 20 still hits, dealing 13 damage and blasting it to pieces. He then attempts to shove the Hydra back with the telekinetic feat, but a 19 makes the save. It's too big and strong. 2 more blasts on the Hydra deals 8 damage on 1 hit, having taken less than 25 damage. The Hydra doesn't lose any heads.
Probably should have used the Crusher feat to
does
push
not
it.
go unnoticed.
Didn't think
The
about it.
Chul's turn. They start with
Probably wouldn't
15
have made a
and
difference.
19 hit points. 2 wisdom saves fail, and the Spirit Guardians deals 18 damage, so the final Chul is left with a single hit point, with its last bit
I remember that. I rolled the 18 and the DM's like, wow, you roll really well. I'm like, actually, that's completely average.
of remaining life.
been rolling
The final
crappy.
Chul attacks Quasar, hitting once, but with his final 1st level slot, Quasar drops a shield on him, and if a Chul could cry, I'm pretty sure this one would. The Expert, no longer paralyzed or grappled, uses the disengage action as a bonus action, and escapes behind his allies. He hunkers down and takes the dodge action. The Warrior slides forward and attacks the Hydra for 17 damage. The Hydras go. It makes its wisdom save and takes 9 damage from the Galactic Swirl. Seeing the shield spell surrounding Quasar, the Hydra chomps down on the weaker looking orc. 4 of the 7 heads bite into flesh, dealing 52 damage.
And my goal there of having the Warrior switch targets to the Hydra was just for this. I was hoping the Hydra would attack the Warrior because the Warrior did have a lot of hit points.
Hydra stands its ground, but regrows no heads. The heroes look at each other. They're catching on. Quasar's turn. Figuring out how this monster operates, he takes the dodge action and content to let the Spirit Guardians do the heavy.
Yeah, so the point here is I do Eldritch Blast plus Spirit Guardians, too much damage, it regrows ahead. If I dodge, battle's going to take a little bit longer, but bit by bit, that Spirit Guardians, it's never going to be doing 25 damage unless I roll well on damage, which isn't happening. So I figure we'll just whittle it down.
Lifting. As a bonus action, he converts 2 sorcery points into a first level spell slot.
And that's because I was
Final
out.
Chul's turn, and it just dies. There's nothing he can do. The expert uses the help bonus action and takes a shot with his bow. 27 hits for 16 damage. This attack does end the Sanctuary spell though. 2 attacks from the warrior, the first with advantage, both just barely hit for 14 damage. The Hydra succeeds on a wisdom save to start its turn, taking 9 damage. It lays into the orc with all 7 heads. 4 attacks land, dealing 42 damage. On Quasar's turn, he disengages to move back, just far enough to telekinetically pull the Hydra back into the Swirling Spirits, where it takes half damage after making its save. The expert uses a bonus action helpful, then fires off a shortbow attack. With disadvantage, a 16 hits and deals 14 damage. The Hydra reels back, screeching and flailing as it falls into the black waters. Its light extinguished for good.
So that was 13 rounds. My understanding is there was 1,300 hit points worth of creatures. So it was about 100 points of damage a round. And the warrior and sidekick were probably contributing, I'd have to guess, 20 to 30 damage a round. So meaning that Quasar was doing between 60 and 70 damage a round, or maybe between 70 and 80 damage a round, be more precise. And it was very swingy. There were some rounds I did a lot more than that, and some rounds I did a lot less. What I really, really noticed was the lack of battlefield control. Because I'm used to things like webs and spike growths and that kind of thing. And I thought, wow, maybe I would have been better off with a character that uses those kinds of spells. But then I thought, but then who's doing the damage? Not these sidekicks, right? So throwing everything on one person is actually pretty hard when you can only concentrate on one spell at a time, because you just can't fill all the roles that you would normally expect in a party. So it's really a different dynamic when you are a single character. The other thing I noticed is Spirit Guardians, of course, was incredibly effective against like the sharks and the mummies. It was really good against, and the water weirds, but the Hydra wasn't that great against. The Hydra is just the wrong kind of creature. It's one creature, ton of hit points. So it is really hard to come up with that one spell that's good in all situations.
Injured sidekicks swim around, locating their projectiles to the best of their abilities. The 3 companions wade over to the exit, exhausted from battle, but resolved to finish what they started. As they move through the catacombs and not knowing what lies ahead, Quasar takes 10 minutes to recast Fine Steed at 3rd level, with no 2nd level slots available. He then casts Spirit Guardians at 3rd level, and with his final 3rd level slot, he casts Armor of Agathis, which targets both the Steed and Quasar. The Kenku...
I think I was offered a short rest at this point, and I said, I think we can't really take a short rest yet. It's too early in the one shot.
Hops on the back of the steed and they attempt to stealth, failing miserably with a 6. As they enter this new chamber, 3 creatures...
And here's where I was, by the way, told that there is 10 minutes between every encounter, and I didn't take Extend Spell, which was a massive mistake, as it turns out. If I had known that there was going to be 10 minutes between encounters, I could have doubled my uses of Spirit Guardians. But as it was, I had to recast at the start of every combat, which was a problem because it was going to use all my high-level slots. At this point, I had 1 first-level slot left, and that's only because I used 2 sorcery points to get it, because I figured I might need a shield spell against that Hydra in the last couple of rounds. And then I had no 2nd-level slots. And then he says I used my last 3rd-level slot, but I think I still had 1 left, if memory serves. And now I'm using my 2nd, 4th-level slot on another Spirit Guardians. Still have my 5th-level slot, but I'm really, really low on resources at this point. Now, a short rest does help, because with short rest, I get 2 first-level slots back with Warlock, plus I can use my Channel Divinity and recover a 3rd-level slot.
Creatures roll for stealth, but the lowest score of 16 isn't enough to bypass the expert's passive perception of 20. The Kenku alerts his comrades of the impending danger. The moans of undead in the distance. Roll initiative.
Round 1.
The orc uses its bonus action aggressive feature to rush 30 feet toward a wraith, then dashes over to the eastern portion of the chamber, awaiting his allies. The expert bonus action helps, then takes a shot with the shortbow, dealing a decent 19 damage. Quasar spurs on his steed, charging directly at the central wraith, stopping just shy of the cosmic swirl. Quasar grips the incorporeal wraith with his telekinetic grip and yanks it toward him. A 9 isn't enough, and one failed wisdom save later means another 17 radiant to the wraith. The warhorse then dashes over to the orc, where Quasar fires off his Eldritch Blast at the eastern wraith, hitting with all 3 beams for 37 damage, and using Hadar to pull this wraith into the Spirit Guardians. The wraith fails its wisdom save and also takes the full 17 damage. The wraith's turn. The nearest wraith fails its save and melts away into nothingness. The next wraith flies toward the enemies, but unable to reach them, it sinks into the floor as a defensive measure. It takes 7 damage at the end of its turn. And the final wraith whooshes over to the heroes, taking the full 17 damage on the way in. Attacking the Kenku, it rolls a natural 20. Crit for 36 necrotic damage. The Kenku is down. The wraith also drops into the floor, taking 8 damage to end the turn.
All right, so what the DM is doing here is he's figured out my strategy, right? So what I do on my turn is I pull creatures into the Spirit Guardian. So he's making sure I have no targets. So I can't use my strategy. So what I decide is, so I've got the Kenku here, it's dying. If I just do lay on hands right now, those wraiths come up, hit the Kenku, it's right back down again. So my hope is that I can hold my action to do a lay on hands and bring the Kenku up. But if they both hit the Kenku before my lay on hands occurs, and I think I had assumed that one of them couldn't make it, but it could, or that one of them would die from the Spirit Guardians, but it didn't. But I figured that way the Kenku could then take an action. But if things had gone wrong and the Kenku had died, I did have Revivify prepared.
Round 2.
With no enemies in sight, the warrior takes the dodge action. The expert rolls a death save. Success. Quasar holds his action to lay on hands for 1 hit point, once the wraiths have taken their turn. This is a gamble because if the wraiths focus fire on the Kenku, they will likely kill him before the lay on hands brings him back to consciousness. But by waiting, this will allow the expert the possibility of getting an action on his turn rather than just being dropped to 0 right away. So let's see how it plays out. The nearest wraith reappears from the floor. If it fails its save, it dies. Make it and it lives with a single hit point. The wraith rolls an 18, exactly what it needs. Not good for the Kenku, but the attack.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I rolled enough damage. You notice there, it took 5 damage from my Spirit Guardians. I just rolled a bit. I think I had counted on just rolling better as well. I definitely figured that only one wraith would be attacking that Kenku.
Misses with a 13. The final wraith approaches, also makes its wisdom save, taking only 5 damage, then attempts to hit Quasar. No dice. To end their turn, the one wraith sinks back into the floor, taking 7 damage, and the other wraith darts away. Quasar's readied action goes off, healing the Kenku 1 hit point.
Round 3.
The warrior dodges. The expert pops up from prone, mounts the horse, and dodges. Quasar lets those Eldritch Blasts fly. It takes 2 before the far wraith is killed. On the wraith's turn, it pops up, fails its save, and takes 15 radiant damage. The undead creature attempts to hit Quasar, but can't get past that 20 AC. It sinks back into the floor for 3 damage. The heroes all take the dodge action as round 4 begins. The wraith rises from the floor, taking 24 radiant damage from Spirit Guardians. It tries to hit Quasar and misses. Resigned to its fate, with only a handful of hit points remaining, the wraith says "fuck it" and falls back into the ground, taking 6 damage and killing itself. On high alert for additional waves of enemies, the heroes dust themselves off and proceed forward when...
Notice the thing that kind of shocked me is just how easy the second fight is compared to the first fight. The first fight is brutal, and then the second fight is 3 wraiths. Or was it 4 wraiths? Something like that. It was pretty easy.
A ghost appears. Quasar attempts to persuade the ghost, with help from the expert, to provide protection as the team rests and licks their wounds. Thankfully, the natural 1 gets replaced by a 21 due to advantage, which is just enough for a success. A safe short rest can be had, but first Quasar channels his divinity to recover a 3rd level slot. During the short rest, the team recovers their health. The Kenku, at only 1 hit point, needs to spend all his hit dice in the process, but with good rolls is able to do so. On they march.
He indicates there that the Kenku recovered its hit points. Kenku never got its hit points. It rolled all its hit dice, and I think it ended up at 67 hit points or something, which was like 30 to 40 less than its maximum. Never got close to its maximum hit points again for the rest of the game.
March, attempting again to stealth, but failing with 2 party members at disadvantage on their stealth rolls. They spot an opening into a massive underground chamber. Quasar upcasts Spirit Guardians at 5th level, and the expert
Yeah, I
silences
had to recast Spirit Guardians again.
the team. More undead up ahead. Lots of them. Roll initiative next time.
And so just as a little bit of a preview, what we've got here are a whole bunch of will-o-wisps and a whole bunch of poltergeists, but these poltergeists have been souped up so that they can use their telekinetic shove on you anywhere. Like they had 200-foot range or something like that, which makes them very challenging. And then I knew that on this encounter, it's usually then an assassin mounted on a winterwolf will come in as well. So I knew this one would be tough. I wasn't sure I could win it. And that's why I used my only 5th level slot here. So that was the end of the first video, which actually it was my first session and the first half of my second session. But anyway, when there is the next session posted on CMC Builds, I will react to it, and you can see how things ended up in the gauntlet. So thanks everyone, and until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D's for everyone. Thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.